This is Architecture, and welcome to our live stream. This is May the 23rd, and for this week's broadcast, we are doing a production on the Emu Emulator 4. And so we'll switch views real quick so you can see what's going on. So I have Ableton Live 12 above here. In the background is Windows XP. Which is connected to the Emulator 4 via SCSI. And all the way over there is the Emulator 4. So that is our multi-display that we have for this day's broadcast. And so we got a couple elements that we've already started with on this track. The first one is going to be this hot pants break, which you'll hear right here. And then we picked out this pad, which took me a minute to figure out what key this pad was in because nothing was really descriptive about the key of this pad. And so we'll play that pad real quick. And with that said, we'll just do a playthrough of this track of where we have it for right now. So this is the rough arrangement that we currently have on this track. Currently have about 6 elements in play. And if we look at where we're at on the sampler memory usage, we've used about 13 out of our 128 megabytes, which doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're considering the machine being as old as it is, this is actually quite generous in memory space to work with. So at this point, we're just kind of thinking about what are the elements that are going to fit in this track. So as the song's playing out, I'll show you a quick demonstration of how I use Recycle with the Emu Emulator 4 on Recycle for Windows, which is what's running behind the DAW right here. Yes, I am the guy who did the Akai X3200 XL Jungle track, which I've also labeled it as Oh Yeah. So yes, that is one of my tracks. That, which was about 2 years ago now. So now that we have Recycle up and running over here, let's go find ourselves a break. We might not use it for this production, but just as a technical demonstration of how this works. So this is basically connected to a SCSI card on a Windows computer that's right next to my emulator side of the rack. It also services my Akai S3200 XL since it is Windows compatible. The big benefit of that is this is a much more powerful machine than the Mac OS9 machines that I run, so I'm able to run more demanding plugins and processing abilities on these samples before I send them to the sampler. So it's just, in my opinion, a much more powerful machine to interface with these samplers. And not to mention, Emu was really key on Windows support, and like with Emulator X, which is another big part of my workflow, it works best on the Windows platform. It really never was made for Mac OS in any way. So it was just kind of a natural conclusion that I would make myself a Windows machine to accommodate that side of my studio. So real quick, we'll probably just pull up the break that we're actually using for this track. So this is off of Jungle Warfare Volume 1. I forget if it's Jungle Warfare or I forget which, it's a 0G compilation. So we have our quarter note chops here on the breaks. Let's preview that, see what it sounds like. So everything's already been pre-chopped. I've started this project a few days ago just in preparation of this live stream. That way things would be kind of ready to go without having to like fumble through like putting it together in real time. That way things could flow a little more smoothly during the live stream. So we have our break. Before we do anything else, we need to make a new preset on the Emu sampler. So we switch displays real quick here. You'll see that we have our Emu sampler right over here. You go to preset, manage, amen break as that needs to be retitled to something else because it's actually a hot pants break. These are just some of the presets that we have in the machine. So if you want a new one, you press the new button. It's going to say this is an empty preset. And what's nice about these machines right here is they do accept PC keyboard input, which I have a PC keyboard that is connected to this, so I can call this Hot Pants. I always like to include what BPM these breaks are. That way I can remember the next time I revisit the project. Yeah, Emu X3 is a amazingly underrated platform. It was almost a crime that it was slept on as badly as it was. I think one of the reasons why it probably didn't get as popular as it was it was a very CPU demanding program, which put a lot of strain on most machines of the era in which it came out on. I know I revisited my 2006 DOS setup and quickly met the limitations of my AMD X64 or 64X2 3800 2 gigahertz processor. My translation of WET for the Emu X3 program couldn't handle that simple of a song, which was like under 16 notes of polyphony, 2 megabytes total project size. So it actually explained to me why I didn't use it so much until much later, until I had the processing power to actually properly utilize it in my setup. So now we have our Hot Pants break program. The other thing you want to do in Recycle is it kind of asks you like what sample number you want to start with. So it's always a good idea to verify what your sample numbers are and see where your next available sample slot is, which is, in our case, it's going to be SO56. This is what we will designate to Recycle to say, I want to send this break to starting at this sample number at 56. So going back over to our screen over here, you go to Sampler, transmit to my Emulator 4. So we're going to call this a different name since it's already a duplicate. I'm just going to put a 0 in the Hot Pants. And the start sample number is going to be 56. If you're starting on a blank slate, starting with sample number 1 works just fine. But do be mindful if you have other programs, it might overwrite those if you select it with number 1. So it's always good to verify that you find your next available sample slot. That way you'll place those samples in a slot and not override anything else. So now we press transmit. And now we are sending over SCSI to the sampler. If I was to do this over MIDI protocol, it would be much slower than this. If I was to use the second or third gen emus, it goes about twice as fast as this. It's just the limitations of the first gen emu samplers, but we use that one because it's one of the better sounding ones. It has the converters that everyone raves about on these first gen units, so that's why we're using this unit. So going back over to here, this should refresh now with our chop. Switch views real quick. So this was the last sample that we had before we sent our breaks. S56 was before it was a blank sample, and now we have our first chop. So there's the chops that we have in memory. We're now using 14 megabytes. The breaks itself was about a megabyte itself. And then if you go over to master again, this is where you do the bulk majority of your work when you're doing everything in multi-timbral mode. Is you have 1 through 16. You have 16 MIDI channels that you can select. And out of those 16, you just can scroll through and you can assign your various programs in memory. And if you load more things into memory, we're pulling off the SCSI 2SD right now. We can browse other banks that are on the SCSI 2SD and load those elements into the song. So let's check this project real quick, see if we got anything worth using here. Not for this song, so I'm going to exit out of here. I do have a lot more Emu sound files to work with on my main storage. I just got to move them over to the SCSI 2SD at some point. And so looking through here, this is the Dance 2000 banks. Seeing there's anything else that we could add here. So look under keys, see if there's anything that sticks out to us. I'm thinking if we had some kind of E-piano, that would really fit the vibe of the track that we're working on. I am curious about this JP6 pad that they have listed here, so I'm going to load that. It's going to load into the preset slot 7, which is currently empty. We're going to press OK, and now it's loading into memory. It's now loaded. We've used 16 megabytes now. And thankfully, we'll have 128 megabytes total to work with, so we have plenty of memory to explore, kind of like see what's going to work and not. This is unlike my Akai samplers, with especially the 3000 series, where the max was 32, and my S1000, for example, has 20. So if this was the S1000, we'd be almost 4 megabytes towards our maximum RAM utilization. So we're going to switch channel 7 to this pad. Now we're just going to preview the pad in our DAW and see if this is something that we're going to want to use on this track. So going over here, I like to duplicate the previous channel, which was channel 6, and I just rename it to channel 7, and then do Command R, rename that to 7. Keeps things kind of moving and fluid. And let's see if this is going to be of any use to us. And something else that's worth pointing out too is if you have a mono sample, you can pan it to the left or to the right, like so. That's what the P parameter stands for. And so let's preview this sample and see if this is something that's going to work for our track. Maybe that's a bit bright. Also reduce the volume real quick just because it's definitely standing out in terms of volume. No, that's not it. Still a bit bright, still a bit loud. Let's bring that down a little further. So play through the track a little bit more and just see if it is even going to work timbrally with the track. Maybe it needs some low-pass filtering. Maybe we can make this work. Let's just kind of see if this is an element that will work for our tracks. This is the part of the songwriting process where you have a basis of the song already established, and now you're trying to figure out what else can I fit into this track. And that's kind of gets to be one of the trickier things in production, is figuring out what's a good addition and what's just making an addition for the sake of making an addition. So let's resume the playing of this track and see if this element's going to work. So my favorite root note for sustained strings in my house productions would probably be C. Either C or F sharp are kind of the two I alternate depending on a couple of factors, especially depending on the key of the song. Something else I do sometimes, every so often, is I turn on the Alpha Juno in chord memory and actually use it as a controller for other things in my setup. Just turn the volume down on that real quick. So we're triggering that JP6 pad from the Emu 4 using the Alpha Juno in our setup here. And it's playing a minor ninth chord. The tricky thing about the key that the song is finding itself to be in, which was like B minor natural, I think is what it was. It's just been one I'm not very familiar with, and so I'm still kind of learning the ropes of what to do with this this scale. You know, I'm not sure there is an LFO on this, but there's definitely some filter movement. That's a fact for sure. I think that the filter is doing quite a bit of work on this sound. It's almost tempting to just kind of like start this from scratch and just see how this works. So we're just going to mute our previous pad section, previous elements, and just kind of play around with what we got here. Sometimes when you're looking to make an addition or subtraction from the song you're working on, sometimes you run into other ideas where it's like, you know, I like this idea better. But I also want to challenge myself to write something in a key that I don't typically write in. Someone has asked if I tried the Tal Alpha Juno plugin. I've heard it. It sounds rather impressive from what I've heard demo-wise. But for myself personally, I haven't demoed that program just yet. It is awfully tempting to pivot with this track. Which I'm thinking we're going to do. So We're going to record this movement real quick. Would help if we looped it first. There we go. So all the elements were previously for B minor, now we're in D minor, so we're going to have to rewrite some of these elements. So I think we're going to use that element here and just get ourselves recorded on that one. So I think somewhere we have found our piano line. I think it was the last repetition of it that I'm going to use for the loop. See how this sounds. As far as my piano background, it's all pretty informal. Just years of just noodling. Oh, that's what's going on. I forgot to loop the part I meant to loop. Whoops. Let's try it again. So at this point, we're just shopping for a bass line. fix that train wreck there for a second. I think we got a bass line there. Just engage our compressor. That should make a difference as well. I'm really liking that element. Just duplicate the channel and have its own MIDI channel for it. funny just changing keys. I feel like much more like adept with like D minor. Since I've written and practiced so much in D minor, I can easily kind of improvise and just work around it. Playing around with the previously loaded string section, which is the violin chorus that is loaded in memory. Let's commit that real quick. Got a keeper. Get some vibes going on that. People ask me, like, what is my creative process like? You're basically witnessing what this looks like in real time. One of the things I'm working on is making it a little more entertaining to watch, because it's something I usually do in solitude by myself, where I'm just kind of vibing out. So I'm working on just kind of like verbalizing what it is that I'm thinking, what I'm thinking about doing next, and then executing what I'm thinking about doing. So now I'm going to try some vibes that I have already loaded in the memory on the Emulator 4. See how this one works. thinking of something that's going to complement the already wandering piano melody. Trying to find a counter melody with the vibes. It's good to see how that take sounds after recording it. This is one of those songs that really could benefit from a very extended intro. The 64-bar intro would be quite long, but might work. Which you're talking about 1 minute and 40 minutes of this BPM, which would be an incredibly long introduction, maybe a 32-bar introduction. Kind of how the creative process goes. Sometimes you'll think you're going to stick with one idea, then you kind of jump tracks into a different idea, you pivot, and sometimes the pivot turns out much better than what you're working on before. So that's sometimes what happens in your efforts to add more elements is you decide, what if we take a different direction? Will this one work better? That's all the time we have for today. Thank you all for joining. For those who did join, for those who didn't, enjoy the archived live stream. This is Architecture.